In this video, I want to walk you through this new 48 volt all-in-one system I recently purchased and built to replace my 24 volt system. I'll walk you through what all I've built here and what I paid, which may actually surprise you. Then I'll explain why I chose this all-in-one unit over some other very popular choices. So the main part of this build is the Orient Power 6.5 kilowatt 48 volt inverter charger. If you're new to these, it's what they call an all-in-one unit. And it just means that the inverter, the battery charger, and the solar charge controllers are all built into this single package. This unit actually has two solar charge controller inputs here. I'll cover more about the details and the price just a little bit later. To build this setup, I first removed the 24 volt system, which I left mostly intact on the board so I can actually use it again at some point. I then put up a 3/4 inch layer of plywood, and then on top of that I put a 1/4 inch Hardybacker board. The owner's manual states not to install the inverter on anything combustible. And I know many of us don't always follow those instructions, but I did it this time. Using the Hardybacker ended up not being nearly as bad as I thought it would. I thought there'd be all kinds of dust and more trouble mounting things, but there really was no trouble at all. And I'm very glad I used it. You just gotta make sure you use longer screws so it can get through the Hardybacker board and get deep enough into the plywood to hold up whatever you're hanging. So let's get started here with the batteries. For now, I ended up just using these two 24 volt Power Queen batteries wired in series to make up a 48 volt power, battery bank. Each one of these batteries is 24 volt batteries, are 200 amp hours each. So both of these put together are the equivalent of two 48 volt 100 amp hour batteries. I've just ordered a new 48 volt huge battery that I'll be doing another video on very soon. And if you're not a subscriber, you may want to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss that video. I've installed these terminal fuses right here directly on the terminals themselves. This protects the wire between the battery while it runs over to the rest of the system. I used this 2-aught battery cable from Windy Nation. I built all these cables by myself, by the way. So since I'm using these batteries here that don't have any communications currently, I needed a shunt to kind of, and battery monitor to kind of keep track of steady charge of the battery. So I bought this little shunt here, and it came with this battery monitor, little display here, and I kind of like it. It's a little smaller than I thought it was going to be, but it has a current state of charge of the battery, how many amp hours remaining, or how much time is remaining, the current amps being used, the voltage of the battery, and the current number of watts being used. I also installed this 160 amp massive DC breaker here. This thing is a beast. And it came with these, I think they're dividers of some kind. This is the only place I can think to use them. It's the first time I've seen these things, so I'm not really sure what to do with them. There's one on the top, one on the bottom. So if you know what these things are for and I'm using them wrong, please let me know down in the comments. I've just not seen these before. The 120 volt AC input comes in right here. It goes up in the unit. I had an electrician install this, a new 40 amp circuit in my main box over there, and run, I think he used 6 gauge wire. He ran over to this. I previously used that in my 24 volt system too. So the AC output comes out here, and in this wire I used actually 6 gauge THHN wire. The owner's manual says he used 4 gauge, and I just couldn't get it to work. It was just too thick. But this 6 gauge THHN wire should be fine. It's up to 75 amps or 9,000 watts, and that's way more than I'll be using in this inverter anyway. So the 120 AC output comes here, and I run that to a distribution box. And inside the distribution box, I used a jumper wire to power both legs of 240 inside here. I have a 20 amp breaker where I run down to a 20 amp AC outlet down here so I can plug things here in the garage. I have a 30 amp 240 volt breaker that runs down to this L1430R. Hope you can see that. I use that to run a generator extension cord, 30 amp generator extension cord, over to my transfer switch. That transfer switch I use to power my critical loads. It's a 10 circuit transfer switch, and I change things up every now and then in there for what I power day to day. I'll put a link, by the way, to a video I did on that down in the description. This 30 amp generator extension cord is good up to 7,500 watts. I found these little PV shutoff breakers here that come with all the MC4 connectors and everything right there on them, so I thought I'd give them a try. So far they're working good. I've currently got 30 amp breakers in there. They came with all the MC4 connectors and everything. It made it very easy to hook this up. So far they're working pretty good. So now back to a little bit more about the features of this Orient Power all-in-one inverter and why I chose it. It has a max continuous output of 6,500 watts or 15,000 watts surge. It can accept up to 8,000 watts of solar input between these two charge controllers here. That's 4,000 watts max on each one of those. The working voltage on the controller is 90 to 230 volts. So you do need quite a bit of solar to even use that. So don't buy this unit if you don't have enough solar. Be sure to research that because it takes quite a bit of voltage. So I have actually, the voltage that I'm running is usually between 140 and 160, and I have 8 200 watt panels wired in series. So that's just enough on one. I only have one of these hooked up right now. I'm not using the other one. That's the way it said to set it up in the manual. You can actually parallel up to 6 of these inverter units together for up to a crazy 39,000 watts of output or 48,000 watts of solar input. It accepts 120 volt input from the grid, as I mentioned earlier, not 240. The AC input is only used to charge the battery and power the loads. It doesn't feed back into the grid or anything like that. It also outputs 120 volts, as I mentioned. Seems like a lot of these units input 240 and output 240 volts, but I was mostly looking just for 120 volt for now. If you're a subscriber, then you most likely know that I focus on emergency preparedness for this channel, and at the moment I'm not looking to take my whole home off grid. Maybe at some point in the future, but right now that would probably be a different location I'd have to move to. In emergency or prolonged outage, I'm likely to not need my 240 volt appliances anyway. The only ones I have is the stove, clothes dryer, and the HVAC system, and I have other backups for all those, so I don't think I need 240 volts for now. This inverter also has a very unique feature, at least I think it's unique, where it does not even need the batteries at all to run. And I think others may have that feature, I'm not really sure, but it basically powers the loads through AC input or through solar. If there's not enough solar, I'd use AC input. And that may be a good way to get started, actually. Batteries are the most expensive of these, expensive part of these systems. So if you were trying to get started with less money, you could get one of these units, not buy the batteries yet, save a little money, wait until you save up, and maybe at some point when you can afford batteries, you purchase them at that point. But you don't actually need batteries for this. It does have UPS feature, and I think I read this transfer time was 15 to 20 milliseconds. And one thing that surprised me is this thing uses, the fan runs on this thing 24/7, never turns off. I didn't expect that, but it's not loud, and it's in the garage, and it doesn't bother me anyway. It's only up to about 46 decibels, I believe. When the refrigerator's not running, I tested it, I think it's at 46 decibels. When it's charging, or when there's a moderate load put on it, I think it gets up to around 57 decibels, which is still not that bad. It is UL 1741 certified. It has a 2-year warranty. I have been running this a little over a month, and I couldn't be happier with it. At the first, I was a little overwhelmed by all the settings and the beeping, which I figured all that out now, and I'm very comfortable with it now. As I mentioned, the first thing I turned off was that beeping. Every time you touch anything, it would beep, and I found that quite annoying. I currently have the settings set so solar is prioritized over grid. I'll also have it set to use the grid to charge the battery only when the voltage of the battery drops below 46 volts, and it charges the battery up to 53 volts, and then it stops charging the battery and starts running off the battery again. Those values are all configurable. So I basically have this set, the settings in here set to only use grid when it has to. You can configure it the other way around though. You can configure it to where it prioritizes grid, keeps the battery charged full, and only starts powering things from the battery or solar when grid's not available. You can do all that. There are all kinds of other settings like battery type, charging voltages, AC output voltage, frequency, and many more. It has a cool LED bar here, which you can actually change the way it displays. You can have it pulse. I think it's called breathing. It's like a slow pulse, and like it's breathing or something, and you can make it scroll. And I think there's a couple of color themes you can choose from also. This inverter was shipped to me with the latest firmware, so I've not had to go through that process yet. Since I do have this tied to my home grid power, I did remove a little grounding screw inside there that did a ground neutral bond. I removed that so there's only one ground neutral bond in my main panel. And I did verify that these loads do have a ground neutral bond even after I removed that screw. Oh, and it also has Wi-Fi, if you're into that, and it has a mobile app, and you can check anywhere in the world. You can check and see the status of this thing. I do it all the time where I'm at work to check the status. You can even change the settings in the app. At the moment, without battery communications, the battery state of charge is just a guess. But when I get the new battery, I'll be getting just very shortly, I will be able to see an accurate state of charge from the mobile app. This will also be displayed here, or I could check it on through the settings here. So I'm sure all of you, or some of you at least, are wondering why I chose this Orient Power unit. Orient Power all-in-one unit over some very popular choices like the EG XP6000, for example. I was looking very closely at that EG4. It seems to be a very high quality unit, and I almost got it. But this Orient Power also seemed to be a good quality unit from other YouTube reviews I've seen. And as mentioned earlier, I really did not need 240 volt split phase input output. Although I can do that with this unit. I can parallel two of these together to get 240 volt split phase output. And I currently don't have 240 volt grid input. I had the 120 volt right here, so I'll have to run 240 volt over here, and I thought, okay, that did play some role in my decision. But what sealed the deal for me over the EG4 was the price. As I mentioned earlier, I did purchase this myself, so the prices I'm about to mention could have changed by the time you end up watching this. So be sure to click the link down in the description to see what the current price is. I found this Orient Power on Amazon for $950. Many of the units I was looking at were between $1,200 and $1,700. And since I used the Amazon Visa to purchase this, everything I buy off Amazon is 5% cash back. I ended up getting this for $900 plus tax. I thought that was an excellent deal for this inverter. And that's quite a bit less than I anticipated when I started this search. I've not had to contact customer service yet, so I can't speak to how good they are for that. I did have a little trouble setting up the Wi-Fi. My Google phone, it just wouldn't work for some reason. So I found an old Android device that I had, and I set it up fine with that. I'm not really sure what the issue was there, but it is working just fine. So everything's going good. If I do start to have any troubles, I'll be sure to post about that and give you an update. But for now, everything's going very smooth, and I'm very happy with my purchase. So this is the new 48 volt system I currently have and using, and let me know your thoughts down in the comment. I guess that does it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.